The night was cold, the wind sharp like broken glass. The metal tracks of the cargo railway stretched through the dark hills of the outer colony, empty and silent except for the distant hum of an approaching train. She lay there, still and broken, her wrists chained behind her back, her ankles tightly bound to the track. Her skin silver blue and glowing faintly was scraped and bruised. Her long dark hair was tangled with blood and dust. She blinked against the night sky, her eyes full of fear, and waited for the sound of death to grow louder. No one had come for her. No one was supposed to. She remembered his voice, the one who betrayed her. "You think you're better than me. Let's see how strong your blood makes you now." Then the chains, the laugh and the silence. He left her there like garbage, like she was nothing. But she was not nothing. She had a name, a family, and a fire still burning inside her heart. Even if she had only minutes left, she would die knowing she had tried. Her ears picked up the low thunder of the train. It was coming fast now, around the bend, its lights beginning to cut through the mist. She turned her head slowly, the metal cold against her cheek. A tear rolled down her face, but she didn't cry out. No one would hear, except someone did, from far down the service trail, hidden by tall weeds and broken fence posts. A young human man walked alone. He was wearing a thick brown coat, boots covered in mud, a bag on his back, and headphones in his ears. He was heading home after a long day fixing wires in the colony's power lines. He liked the quiet, the peace after chaos. Then he stopped. At first, he thought he heard a cry, a whisper carried by the wind. He pulled off one headphone and listened. Silence, then again just barely a soft voice, full of pain. "Help, please." He turned, heart racing. No one ever came out here. Not this late. He moved fast now, cutting through the brush, his flashlight shaking in his hand. The train whistle screamed in the distance. Closer, louder, and then he saw her. She was lying across the tracks, bound, unmoving, eyes glowing in terror as the light of the train appeared behind her. A wave of panic hit him like a fist. He didn't think. He ran. "Hey, I see you. Hold on," he shouted, dropping his bag. The ground shook beneath him. The train's horn blasting again, he fell to his knees beside her, grabbing the thick metal chains around her wrists. "They used plasma locks," he muttered. "Who did this to you?" She shook her head, breath shaken. "No time, please." The train. He glanced over his shoulder. The headlights were blinding now. The roar like thunder. He had seconds, maybe less. He pulled out a small torch tool from his belt, hands shaking as he fired the plasma cutter. Sparks flew. The chain hissed. Too slow, too slow. "No," he said through his teeth, pushing harder. "Come on. Come on." The first lock cracked, then the second. He lifted her as the ground trembled violently, throwing them both off the track and into the dirt. The train thundered past, inches from their feet. Screaming into the night, the wind from it pushed them flat. Then silence returned just as fast. He rolled over, breathing hard, and looked at her. "Are you okay?" he asked, eyes wide, voice soft. She didn't answer right away, her body shaking. Then she whispered, You saved me." He nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess I did." She tried to sit up, but her legs gave out. He caught her gently, his hand behind her back. "Who did this to you?" he asked again. Her eyes met his, and for a moment they were full of sorrow and rage. "My mate," she said coldly. "He sold me." The human's face froze. He didn't understand all of it, but he didn't need to. He stood, lifted her in his arms, and looked toward the hills. "Let's get you out of here," he said. She looked at him one more time, then rested her head against his chest. For the first time in hours, she felt warmth. Not from fire, but from hope. And the human didn't even know what storm he had just stepped into. The human's arms trembled as he carried her down the dark trail. The train had passed, but its roar still echoed in his chest like a warning. The woman in his arms was light, too light. Like someone who hadn't eaten in days, her silver blue skin felt cold against his jacket. And her breathing was uneven. He kept walking, not sure where to go. There was no shelter nearby, only the old service station he used during power outages. It was a broken hut with a cracked roof and a single working heater. But it was better than the open night. "I'm Mason," he said, trying to keep her awake. "What's your name?" Her eyes fluttered open slowly, glowing faintly in the dark. "Shirali," she whispered, her voice dry and tired. "My name." "Is Shirali okay?" "Shirali, hang in there," Mason said. "We're almost there." His boots crunched over gravel as he reached the metal door of the old hut. He pushed it open with his shoulder and stepped inside. Dust danced in the air, and the wind howled through the broken panels. But the heater in the corner blinked green. Still working, he laid her gently on an old mat, then rushed to start the heater. Warmth slowly filled the room, chasing the frost away. Shirali curled up slightly, trying to absorb it. Mason pulled off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. She looked at him, confused. "Why? Why did you help me?" She asked softly. No one else would have. Mason sat down beside her, leaning against the cold wall. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I heard you, I saw you, and I couldn't leave you there." She stared at him like he was something impossible. In her world, help never came without a price. "My mate betrayed me," she said, her voice low. "He was supposed to protect me. But when he learned who I really was, he chained me, left me there like garbage." Mason's brow furrowed. "Who are you, really?" Shirali looked away, shame in her eyes. "I'm not just any woman," she whispered. "I'm daughter of the Varelian High Council. I was meant to speak against the new slave trade on our outer worlds. But they silenced me before I could." Mason blinked. He had heard of the Varelian stall, elegant, strong-willed. But he had never seen one this close, let alone rescued one. "So someone tried to erase you," he said, thinking aloud. "And they thought the train would do it for them." She nodded slowly. "And now? I don't know who I can trust." "You don't have to trust me," Mason said, standing up, "but I'm not going to turn you in. If that's what you're worried about, you're safe here for now." He walked over to his backpack and pulled out a water bottle and a protein bar. He placed them beside her. "Eat something, get your strength back. Then we figure out what's next." Shirali stared at the food, hesitating, then hunger won. She tore open the bar and ate like someone who hadn't tasted anything in days. Mason watched quietly. Her face, though bruised, was strangely beautiful. Not in the way humans usually meant, but in a way that made her seem like she came from a world full of stars. As she finished, she looked up again. "You're strange, human," she said softly. "You're not afraid of me. You don't ask for anything in return." Mason gave a small smile. "I fix things for a living," he said. "Maybe tonight." "I just fixed a life instead of a wire." A long silence passed between them. Warm now, not awkward. Outside, the wind died down, and the moonlight slid through the broken wall panels, lighting Shirali's face, but the peace didn't last long. Suddenly, Shirali's ears twitched and her body tensed. "What is it?" Mason asked. "Alert, she said, her eyes wide. "They're coming." Mason's heart dropped. "Who?" "The ones who chained me," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "They'll come back when they learn the train didn't kill me. And they always come in numbers." Mason reached for his tool belt and checked his plasma cutter. It wasn't a weapon, but it was better than nothing. "Then we're not staying here," he said firmly. "We move before they find us." Shirali nodded weakly. She tried to stand, but winced in pain. Her legs weren't ready yet. Mason stepped closer. "Then I'll carry you again," he said. No arguments. She looked up at him. In her world, strength was measured in power, fear, and control, but this human. He measured strength and kindness, and somehow, that scared her more than chains. The night swallowed them as Mason carried Jarrell into the shadows. The cave entrance was hidden behind thorny trees and old mining debris. It was cold inside, but silent safe, for now. Mason lit a small lamp from his kit, the soft glow bouncing off the cave walls. He laid Jarrell down on a smooth rock ledge. Wrapped her again in his coat. She looked pale, exhausted. But there was something sharp in her eyes now. Not just fear, not just pain, but memory. Mason sat beside her, rubbing warmth into her fingers. For a while, they didn't speak. The wind outside howled, but in the cave, only the low buzz of the lamp remained. Finally, Mason broke the silence. "Tell me the truth, Jarrell. What were you going to say before they tried to kill you?" She hesitated, her gaze fixed on the cave ceiling. Then slowly, her voice low, "They call it relocation, but it's not. They're taking entire villages, my people. Other Razus, and selling them off-world to the black markets, to pleasure houses." To mines, Mason's face tightened. "You mean slavery?" Jarrell nodded. "They hide it behind false names. They erase records, change maps, and the High Council pretends not to see." She pulled up the sleeve of her tunic, showing him the fresh scar near her wrist. "They chain us with encoded plasma cuff, so only a council seal can break them. My mate had access to that seal. He used it to lock me down." Mason clenched his fists. The image of her body on the tracks burned in his mind again. Why would he do that to you? Jarrell closed her eyes. "I told him I was going to speak at the summit. I was going to show the proof, the names, the roots, but he was part of it. He chose credits over me." Silence fell again, heavier than before. Mason reached into his bag and took out a small medical patch. Gently pressing it to her shoulder, her skin shimmered faintly under his touch. "But she didn't pull away, Jarrell," he said softly. "You were going to do something brave, something that mattered." She turned her head toward him. Her voice cracked. "I didn't want to be brave. I just couldn't stay quiet anymore." Mason nodded. "I think that's what real bravery is." Suddenly, a sound echoed outside gravel, shifting under boots. Jarrell's body went tense, her eyes wide. Mason moved fast, turning off the lamp and grabbing his plasma cutter. He crouched near the cave entrance, his breath slow, his heart fast. Through the branches, he saw them, 3 shadows. Tall and armored, alien bounty hunters, their armor marked with the symbol of the private syndicate dark traders. Merciless and silent, one of them held a tracker. Its screen blinking red. They were close, too close. Mason turned back to Jarrell, whispering, "We can't fight them." "Not like this." Jarrell reached into her belt and pulled out a small crystal disc. "They're tracking me with this," she said. "My mate must have slipped it into my clothes. I never even felt it." Mason took the disc and looked at her. "I can draw them away. Lead them to the other side of the ridge, but you'll have to stay hidden." Jarrell reached out, grabbing his arm. "No, they'll kill you." Mason gave a small smile. "Maybe, but I'm good at running in tunnels. They'll think I'm you. It might give you time." She looked into his eyes, and something inside her cracked. No one had ever offered to die for her before, not even those who claimed to love her. She touched his hand, her fingers trembling. "If you live through this, I'll tell you everything. I'll hold you to that," he whispered. Then he turned and vanished into the dark. Jarrell crawled deeper into the cave, hiding behind a wall of stone. Her heart pounded with guilt. She was tired of running, tired of hiding, but this human. He was choosing to risk everything for her. Outside, Mason activated the tracker. dropped it on the ground, and threw a stone into the trees. The noise worked. The hunters moved fast. Following the signal and the sound, their weapons drawn, Mason ran, dodging between rocks and tree roots. They chased him without a word, focused, hungry. But he knew these trails better. He had worked here, fixed these lines, mapped every dip and turn, and he used that knowledge now. Like a ghost in the night, back in the cave. Sorali opened her eyes again. The silence was back, but this time it was full of fear. She didn't know if he would return, but she knew one thing. If he did, she would never let him walk away from her again. The cave felt colder without Mason. Jirali crouched in the shadows, her back against a wall of rough stone. Her heart beat hard, too loud in her ears. Every crunch outside, every whisper of wind made her flinch. He had run to protect her. He didn't owe her anything yet. He chose to become the hunted. She hated that, and yet she had never felt more. Seen, minutes passed like hours. Then footsteps, not running like Mason's, but slow, careful, searching. They were coming back. Jirali didn't move. She pressed her body tighter to the wall, clutching a sharp piece of broken rock in her trembling hand. She might be weak, but she would not be taken again without a fight. Just outside the cave entrance, 3 armored figures stood still. The tallest one lifted a scanner. Its screen blinking once, then flatlined. "The tracker's been destroyed," he growled. "But she's near. I can smell her fear," another one hissed. Voice robotic, human decoy moved west. But energy trail ends. It's a trick. The third knelt near the entrance. Scanning the ground, ash particles, disturbed moss. Footsteps too light to be male. She's inside. Jirali's fingers tightened on the rock. Her breath frozen in her chest. They had found her, and Mason was gone. The first bounty hunter raised his plasma blade, its blue glow lighting the cave entrance. "Bring her out alive if possible," he said. "But if she resists..." He didn't finish the sentence. Suddenly, a loud boom echoed from the west. Followed by falling rocks and dust, the hunters turned fast, raising their weapons from behind a tree. Mason stood on a rocky ledge with an old mining blaster he had found in a buried crate. It was ancient, barely functional but loud. "Looking for me?" he shouted, voice echoing through the dark. The lead hunter raised his arm to fire, but Mason had already disappeared back into the trees, split up. Barked the leader, "He's protecting her. Find him." Then find her, 2 hunters chased after Mason, their heavy boots smashing through brush. The third stayed near the cave. Entering slowly, blade humming, he moved like a machine, scanning the walls, the ground, the air. Jirali knew she had only seconds. She held her breath, pressed flat, and waited for him to pass. The moment he stepped past her hiding spot, she struck. The rock slammed into the side of his helmet with a crack. He stumbled, growled, then spun around too fast. His blade swung, just missing her arm by inches. She rolled away, grabbing his drop scanner, and smashed it against the wall. Sparks flew. Light burst. The hunter roared in pain as the device exploded in his face. Blinded, he fell to his knees. Jirali didn't wait. She grabbed his stun rod and limped deeper into the cave. Outside, Mason was running out of options. The old blaster had overheated after one shot, and the hunters were closing in. He jumped behind a rock just as plasma shots burned past his head. The air smelled like melted iron. His lungs burned, but he refused to stop. He had to get them away from her. He had to survive, if only to see her face again. One of the hunters suddenly leaped from behind. Tackling him, Mason hit the ground hard, pain exploding through his ribs. The hunter raised a blade ready to strike. Then, out of nowhere, a stun rod slammed into the hunter's neck. The armored figure screamed and collapsed. Twitching on the ground, Mason looked up, eyes wide. Jirali stood there weak, panting but alive, her hair blew in the wind, her arms shaking as she held the rod. "I told you not to die," she said. "You didn't listen." Mason coughed a laugh, grabbing her hand. Nice timing. The second hunter ran toward them, rage in every step, but Jirali didn't back down. She looked at Mason and nodded. "Together?" she said. Mason picked up the old blaster and aimed. Jirali stood at his side, one last charge left in the stun rod. As the hunter raised his rifle, they struck. The blaster fired, hitting the chest plate. The rod cracked against the leg joint. The hunter fell, groaning, armor sparking. Silence returned. Jirali collapsed to her knees. Exhausted, Mason dropped beside her, holding her tightly. "You came back," he said, breathless. "I couldn't leave you," she whispered. "Not after everything you did for me." He looked at her, his face soft. "You don't have to run anymore." She looked into his eyes. "No," she said slowly, "but now we fight smarter. Because this was just the beginning." Smoke still floated in the cold night air. The stunned bodies of the bounty hunters lay scattered behind them. Motionless but breathing, Jirali sat beside Mason on a ledge above the ravine. Their backs to the wind. They didn't speak right, Away just breathed. Alive, for now? Mason looked at his trembling hands. The old blaster still warm in his grip. "I've never done anything like that," he whispered. "I repair lights, I fix heaters. I don't fight people." Jirali stared out at the stars, her face quiet but unreadable. "You saved my life," she said softly. Again, he turned to her. "I wasn't trying to be a hero," he said. "I just couldn't let you die." She finally looked at him, her glowing violet eyes soft under the moonlight. "I'm not used to kindness," she said. "Where I come from, mercy is weakness. Trust is dangerous." Mason gave a half smile. "Then I must look really weak and foolish to you." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You look human." They sat in silence again, their shoulders touching. The fire Mason had built crackled nearby, casting soft shadows over the cave walls. It was the first warmth they had felt in hours. Jirali leaned closer, her voice quieter now. "I was raised in glass towers," she said. "Taught to speak with power and smile without feeling. They said I would help rule someday. But I saw things I wasn't supposed to." She reached into her torn clothes and pulled out a small, glowing data chip. "This holds evidence," she whispered. "Names, coordinates, shipments of living beings being sold across systems. It's why they tried to kill me." Mason stared at the chip, then at her. "That little thing. It could shake entire governments." She nodded. "But I can't send it, not without the council code, which only one person has." "Your mate," Mason said grimly. Jirali's face tightened. "Not anymore," she said coldly. "But yes, he still controls the key without it. The data means nothing." Mason leaned back, thinking, so we have the truth. But no way to prove it. Jirali hesitated, then reached out slowly and took his hand. Her fingers were still cold but steady. "There's a way," she said. "If I get close enough to his biometric seal, I can duplicate the unlock pattern." "That sounds risky," Mason said. Eyebrows raised. "It is," she replied, "but I can't run forever. And I won't hide while people are being sold like cargo." He looked at her with quiet respect. For someone who had been chained, beaten, betrayed, she still held fire inside her. It inspired him, shook him, made him feel something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. "Then I'm with you," he said. Without hesitation, Jirali blinked. "You don't even know where we're going." "I don't care," he replied. "If I can help, I will." A long silence passed. Warm this time. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned her head on his shoulder, just for a moment. "Thank you, Mason," she whispered. Not just for saving me, but for believing I'm still worth saving. He swallowed the lump in his throat. You are, he said softly, even if the galaxy forgot. I didn't. The fire crackled gently beside them. Outside, the cold wind blew, but inside the cave, something else had formed a bond not made by blood, or contract, or politics, but by choice. Later that night, Mason showed her an old map drawn in the dirt. These tunnels go under the old mining sectors, he explained. We can use them to move quietly, avoid checkpoints, but if we go this way, it leads straight to the skyport. Geraldine studied the lines carefully, her eyes sharp. If we reach the skyport, I can hijack a signal relay, she said, with the right angle. I can send this data straight to the media channels across 3 sectors. Mason nodded. But it'll set off every alarm in the system. I know, she said. Standing up slowly, her legs were still sore, but stronger than before. I'm ready to light the fire. He stood beside her, holding out his hand. Then, let's burn the darkness down. She looked at his hand, then took it, not as a victim, not as a stranger, but as someone finally choosing her own path, with someone who would walk it beside her, and in that quiet, flame-lit cave. A promise was made, not with words, but with a look. They would finish what was started together. The sun hadn't risen, but the air was already awake. Sirens wailed in the far distance, echoing over hills and broken towers. The city had learned something. Someone had survived, and they were looking. Mason and Geraldine stood at the mouth of an old drainage tunnel. Moss clung to the concrete walls, and rusted pipes dripped cold water onto the cracked floor. They had walked through miles of dark passages to get here. Now only one path remained, straight into the skyport security zone. We're going to be seen, Mason said quietly, adjusting the strap on his bag. I know, Geraldine replied, her voice calm. But we need access to the central terminal, just a few seconds near the network node. And I can broadcast everything. She clutched the glowing chip against her chest. The evidence of betrayal, of slavery, of broken promises. I just hope we get to walk away afterward, Mason muttered. They moved fast, weaving through alleyways and broken fences. They wore old maintenance uniforms Mason had kept in his emergency supply bag. Not perfect, but enough to pass for late shift workers at the skyport gate. 2 armored guards stood talking, half awake. Geraldine kept her head down as Mason pushed an old ID badge into the reader. The red light blinked once, twice, then turned green. They walked through. Hearts pounding, no questions, no alarms, yet inside the terminal. The floor buzzed with energy. Drones hovered, lights flickered, and the scent of burning fuel filled the air. They blended with the crowd, heading straight toward the maintenance corridor. I still don't understand how that old ID worked, Geraldine whispered as they turned a corner. I never returned it when I quit, Mason said with a smirk. Guess being lazy saved us. They reached the terminal chorus small room behind thick doors. Geraldine looked at the biometric scanner beside it and froze. What is it? Mason asked, watching her face turn cold. This scanner, she said slowly. It doesn't open with a badge. It only opens with his code. Mason's heart dropped. You mean he's here? She whispered. My ex-mate. They knew I might try this. They're waiting before Mason could respond. The door hissed open from the inside, and there he stood, tall, elegant, armored in royal chrome, his eyes sharp, and lips curled in a cruel smile. Well, he said, stepping forward. Look who lived. Geraldine didn't flinch. She stood tall, face unreadable. You left me to die, she said calmly. You didn't even hesitate. It was cleaner than strangling you myself, he replied coldly. You had become a problem, always asking questions, always digging too deep. Mason stepped between them. Step aside, he growled. She's not alone anymore. The alien prince laughed. And you must be the pet she picked up along the way. Cute. Mason's fist moved before he could stop it. It landed hard across the prince's jaw. The sound echoed. Guards nearby turned, shocked. The prince wiped his mouth, blood on his fingers. Wrong move, he snarled, grabbing a blade from his belt. A fight broke out, fast and violent. Mason ducked a strike, tackled the prince, and slammed him into the wall. Jerily moved to the panel, hands shaking as she pushed the chip into the network slot. The screen blinked red. Access denied. Biometric code required. It read. She turned, desperate. Mason, I need his hand. Mason understood. He wrestled the prince down, grabbed his wrist, and slammed it against the panel. The light turned green, the chip uploaded, and in seconds, nameage, coordinates, and slave documents began streaming across public frequencies. Every screen in the skyport lit up. Holograms filled the air. Exposing the truth, people stopped, gasped. Soldiers hesitated. Guards froze. Some dropped their weapons, others backed away. Shirali turned from the terminal, her eyes locked on Mason, but he wasn't standing. The prince had stabbed him in the side before fleeing. Now Mason was on the ground. Blood soaking through his shirt. Mason. She screamed, rushing to him. He smiled weakly. You did it, he whispered. You showed them the truth. Tears fell from her eyes. You didn't have to take that blade for me. Yes, he whispered again. Dead guards ran toward them, but not to arrest, to help, to protect. The truth had changed everything, and Jirali. She held Mason close, her voice trembling. Don't you die, human, she whispered. I still need you. Mason lay still on the hospital bed. Pale but breathing, machines beeped softly beside him, showing the slow rhythm of life returning to his body. Jireli sat beside him, her hand gently holding his. Her eyes, usually sharp and strong, were now soft, full of silent prayers. He had lost too much blood. The blade had gone deep. But the guards had rushed him to the med unit in time. Now, for the first time in days, he rested. Jirali hadn't moved in hours, not since she made her final statement before the emergency tribunal. The data had gone public. People from 3 systems had seen the truth's documents. Names, slave routes, protests had erupted. Leaders had stepped down, and the syndicate had begun to collapse, and her mate. He was arrested trying to flee. His face now appeared on bounty boards instead of news screens. He would be remembered not as a prince, but as a coward. Jireli stood slowly and walked toward the large window. Outside, the city buzzed. But everything had changed. The sky looked brighter. Not because the sun was stronger, but because lies had finally been burned away. A soft cough behind her made her turn fast. Mason's eyes opened slowly, weak but aware. You stayed, he whispered, his voice dry but real. Jireli rushed to his side, tears rising again. I told you not to die, she said, half laughing, half crying. He smiled. The smallest curve of his lips, I listened. This time, she touched his face. Her fingers gentle. You saved me again. Even after everything, you still put yourself in front of that blade. He looked at her with tired eyes. Because you matter, you always did. Silence stretched between them. Full of unspoken words, Shirali finally reached into her coat and placed the small, cracked data chip on the table beside his bed. It's over, she whispered. The world knows. No more chains. Mason nodded slowly. You did it, Jireli. Not just for you, but for everyone they tried to hide. She sat beside him again, her voice quieter now. Do you know what the council asked me today? He blinked slowly. What? They offered me a title, she said, with a faint smirk, a crown. Said I should take my father's place, become a voice of the new council. Mason chuckled weakly. Well, Sounds like a big deal. Jirali's smile faded, replaced with something deeper. I said no. His eyes widened. You what? I don't want a throne built from broken promises, she said. I want to build something real, something small, something honest. Mason tilted his head, amused and confused. Like, what? She stood slowly, walked to the window again, then turned to him like a home, she said. Maybe near trees, with quiet air, no war, no secrets, and maybe with someone who once pulled me from train tracks and never let go. Mason stared at her. Speechless for a moment. Are you saying? Jirali walked back to his side, took his hand gently. I'm saying I'm tired of being a symbol. I just want to be someone's person. Yours. If you'll still have me, he laughed softly, then winced. Don't make me laugh while I'm stitched together. Sorry, she whispered. Brushing his hair gently, I'll say it again when you're stronger. No need, he said. You already fixed what was broken days past. Mason healed, slowly but surely. Jirali never left his side, and word of their fight spread across systems. No longer hunted, she was now a symbol of resistance. But she didn't care about fame. She only cared about the man who carried her out of the darkness. Not for reward, not for power, but because it was right. One morning, they stood at the edge of the colony field. Watching the sun rise together, Mason leaned on her shoulder now. Not from weakness, but because he finally had someone to lean on. Jirali looked at the sky, her voice calm and steady. You know, they built kingdoms to control people like me, she said. But those kingdoms are dust now. Mason looked at her, and what do we build instead? She turned to him with a smile. Something better, she said. Something we choose, and hand in hand, they walked forward, no longer broken, no longer hunted, but free, together.